All right, to gain access to the area that I'm going to be passing this Starlink dish cable from, or through rather, you have to take off this side panel that allow you to get to these bolts to then be able to take this plastic off, the trim. And what I'm trying to get to is the pressure pass-through area that's behind this. You know, these are to relieve the excess pressures whenever you open or close the door. You know, if something like this didn't exist, then I think you'd risk kind of shattering your windows whenever you close the door, especially that sliding door, because there's so much surface area. But I'm going to leverage this as a cable pass through. In fact, you can see some of my Havelock wool insulation there. So it just passes straight through the cabin. So I'm going to pass the Starlink cable through the equivalent pressure relief that's back behind here. But most importantly, what I wanted to show is that you have to take this side panel off to be able to get to these screws. The other screws are pretty obvious, but then this comes off. I almost forgot, you also have to take the stupid tail light off to be able to get to this one bolt here. Luckily it's just hand fasteners or hand tightened bolts. I'll show you here. So you don't necessarily need a special tool, even though it looks like you might. These should be hand tight, but depending on your build, it might be a little bit more difficult to get in there to be able to break it loose, but I was eventually able to. And obviously, also depending on your build, you may have some trouble getting this plastic, you know, piece off. I had to use one of these, which, you know, all my life I've never used one of these, and now I'm using it all the time. So I'm glad I ended up keeping these. But, you know, once you get that piece off, you'll gain access to just these two hand tightened bolts that hold the tail light on, and then you can gain access to this bolt right here. And voila, it's off now, and you can get to the vent, that pressure relief vent. And this is where I've been passing some cables through just so I can limit the amount of holes I'm putting in the van and also make some of the access ports a little bit more discreet. I did the same on the other side for my inverter, shore power. And you can see that right there. You know, just pass the cable through that vent, no holes. So I'll do the same here, pass it through the vent, you know, from the inside to the outside, and then I'll remove that reflector, and that's gonna be where my new port is gonna be to be able to plug in the satellite. So that way I don't even have to open up the doors if, you know, want to plug and unplug the satellite. So on to the next steps. Here is the back trim piece, and I'll show you what I'm trying to install here specifically is this little cable adapter here that's all weather. So I'm going to be installing that guy here, and then once it's installed, I can't really do this with one hand, but this will be the other end of the satellite cable, and all they are is RJ45. And if I haven't said so already in the edit of this video, the Starlink satellite cable is just a Cat5e cable, so it's just a network cable. That being the case, I am using some RJ45 connectors, and we'll be able to wire that guy into this. So the idea is whenever I'm parked up and I'm ready to deploy the satellite, all I have to do is flip down this rubber piece from the outside and then just take the satellite and plug right in, and we're good to go. And then if I want to take it all down, then obviously just unplug, coil up the cable, put away the satellite. You know, this is a huge improvement in the current way that I deploy it, which is to have to fish the cable through the van and do so in such a way that I don't have to have like a door open if I don't want it open, or anything too far open to let bugs in or whatnot, and it's just more of a pain. So simply just making it to where I can just plug this guy into the outside is going to be a huge quality of life improvement. Now the next step is to drill the right size hole for this guy and just mount it. And then at that point, I have to splice the Starlink cable and crimp in some of these RJ45 connectors. And honestly, that's pretty much it. So, and then do a little cable fishing. So next steps. I just so happen to have some 2x4 scraps here that I was able to stack up, and then just it actually fit coincidentally right over the top, so it gives me a better working area to actually use this 1-inch hole saw on, because you know, this is not level, this plastic piece, so it's not like I could just set it up on the bench top and it'd be stable. So that was pretty lucky. I was able just to grab these scraps and I'm already ready to start drilling. So yay. There we go, boy. Yeah, it's looking good. Here it is. So this is the new access port for the Starlink cable. Flip it up, plug it in. In fact, I can do this one-handed now. So there's a mark on here, so that's up. So then I'll just be able to, there we go. So there, now it'd be plugged in. And if I wanted to bounce, then just take and then just unplug and then close this guy up. And we're good to go. The thing that I've realized I'm gonna have to do, or I'm gonna choose to do, now that I see this in place, is, you know, this is gonna be exposed to moisture being on the outside. And since that's just a straight plug with no weather shielding, I'm most likely, once the cable is actually installed, I'm gonna silicone around that just to make sure that no moisture gets in there as a precaution, because I certainly would hate for that to be, you know, cause some sort of a problem. So, yep. And continuing. Sorry for the fan noise. It's Florida, so it's hot. I'm to the point now where I'm trying to mock up or just make a pedestal mount for the router, because unfortunately this guy wasn't intended to be mounted. There are no mount points. It's just a solid piece of plastic. The base doesn't even detach. So, and you can see on the back there's no mount points, so I've got to kind of rig something up here. I grabbed some scrap and using some 3/4 inch plywood that I had laying around. This is going to go into the garage, because just for me, that's the better place for it, which is a shame because this thing looks very cool. I hate to bury it in the garage, but you know, it is what it is. But the most important thing for me, other than the mount, is to be able to make it to where I could take this router out of the van if I wanted to. I don't want to lock Starlink to the van in case for some reason I want to take it out and use it, say, in a cabin somewhere that doesn't have internet, or, you know, whatever reason. I just want to have the option to take it out easily. So for this piece, what I've done is I've used some wood inserts. In this case, it's brass, but puts a thread. It's a threaded insert into this bottom base plate, so that way I can screw and unscrew this repeatedly without, you know, worrying about damaging the threads if I were just to, you know, use wood screws or something like that. Whenever I do make my way to Lowe's, I'm going to get some thumb screws so I can do it by hand. But this will enable me to be able to take the router out easily. The base has a 45-degree angle, so I've actually cut that at 45 degrees. So it'll kind of grab onto it, and I'm going to put 2 pieces of wood block back here, just enough to keep it pressed into this, so that way it'll kind of hold it. You know, this is light, and despite a lot of the, you know, road vibration stuff it might get, if I wedge it up in there tight enough, it really won't move. We'll see. I might actually put against the wall another little block here to support it up high. But again, with this design, what I'm trying to do is make sure that I can get the router in and out very easily if I so choose. And even though I'm modifying the cable itself for the satellite will be permanent as far as inside the van. So I've ordered a second cable from Starlink to have available should I want to take, you know, this whole setup out of the van somewhere. I have a cable that, you know, I'll be able to take with me wherever I'm plugging in the satellite. And it's just pocket hole screws underneath this, so it's just going to mount directly into the wall. I don't know if I'm going to need more support underneath it, so we'll see. Again, this router is pretty light, so I'll mount it up and see, you know, how stable it is, and then just kind of take it from there, just figuring it out as I go. And here we are. We've got a little block back there to keep it from being able to tilt forward, since this is going to keep it from tilting backwards. And I mean, it's not a flat workbench, so that's why it's moving, but I mean, this thing is completely solid. So now all I have to do is install it into the van after doing a little sanding. And I might put a little bit of a finish on there, even though it's going to be hidden. But I think the weight of this is going to be okay for 3 pocket screws to hold it up. Because I don't want it to get installed in the van and, you know, be rocking, you know, on the wall. So I might actually put some more blocks underneath of here to get the surface area of this a little bit more to help out with that. But otherwise, you know, we're kind of on the home stretch as far as this guy's concerned. So once this is installed, then I know the length of satellite cable I need to get out the vent hole, and then I can go ahead and snip and start installing these guys. So I think at this point we're kind of on the home stretch. And here it is mounted. So it seems stable enough. Let's see if I can move that without shaking the camera. So yeah, looks pretty stable. So let's get the Starlink set up in here, or router rather. And there we are. Yes, this guy is very stable. And what I did was, for my power, I have it routed over and then through my bed partition underneath one of my seats, where I'll have where I do have an on-off switch on that specific outlet. In fact, that is a strip. It's like a three socket plug, and I have another little outlet adapter that has an on-off switch on it. And I did that because I don't want the Starlink router to come on by default when I turn on my inverter. I want the option to be able to turn on the inverter but not have the Starlink on, but also be able to turn on the Starlink very easily from within the van. So by having that on-off switch underneath my seat, all I have to do is just lift up the seat, flip the switch, and boom, you know, as long as my inverter's on, then the Starlink comes on. But if I'm somewhere and I don't have Starlink deployed and I need to cook because I use an induction cooktop, I can still turn on the inverter and not turn on the Starlink router. So that's why I'm routing at least the power cable in that way. So now we can get down to the main point, and that is custom making the cable that I need for the dish. So that should be interesting. All right, so now you can see I've pushed the cable through and cut myself in the process. That's always fun, but you know, if you don't give blood, it doesn't work right. So yeah, passed through here and was able to, you probably won't see that very well, but you can see there the cable's coming up, and here's the current in. So I'm gonna just pull enough to go up to that router to be able to plug in, and then I'll know precisely where to make my cut on this side of the cable to then wire it into the socket that I've installed on the plastic trim piece. All right, this is the point of no return. I'm gonna leave myself some slack on the inside, just in case I gotta do this more than once, but don't wanna make too much, so I don't have too much cable to deal with. So get this guy shoved in there. And yeah, I guess this is it. There we go, $70 cable just cut. Here it is, first cable done. So that guy will plug into here. And it took a couple attempts because, true to form, I actually got the cable end, or the RJ45 connector on, and I forgot to put on the housing first. So after the second attempt and getting it right, I had to snip that bad boy off, put this little housing on first, and then put the RJ45 on. So yeah, done that more than a few times, but whatever, it's done. Now for the outside. All right, now this one is done. Luckily, it only took one try. So all I really focused in on was making sure that the order of my colors were the same on both connectors. So you know, this isn't like, you know, the industry standard pin out color, you know, whatever. I just made sure that whatever colors, you know, I started with is what I did on the other end, you know, so just the order of those. So just got to plug this into that guy, and then we'll do a dry run here. We'll bring out the satellite and see, and hopefully this guy still works. All right, we're in business. I stuck it up there just because I'm in an alleyway. I want to make sure that I get as much sky as possible. Didn't want it to, you know, the variable of just a bad area causing my troubleshooting or success to be hindered in any way. So I moved it up there just to make sure it got plenty of sky. But there we go. It's kind of moving a little bit. It's still kind of sorting itself out. I just ran a speed test and I was getting like 60 to 70 megabits per second. Now that it's adjusted itself, I'm gonna rerun the test again, but I mean, proof positive. It's getting data, it's, you know, getting power, everything seems to be working. So now my deployment's gonna be so much easier. Instead of trying to fish the cable out of the van each time, I have a very inconspicuous, easy place to plug into. I can unplug, coil up the cable, and just toss it into the back. So I call this a win. I will put some information in the bottom, or I should say in the description of this video whenever it's finally uploaded, and tell you about the part that I got there to make this possible. Aside from the bracket to hold the Starlink router, I mean, this was like super simple. I mean, you're just splicing the cable and putting two RJ45 connectors in there, and you're effectively done. Just passing it through. So yeah, I hope this helps somebody, and can't wait to use this in some beautiful places. Yay. All right, just did some testing. I was streaming a YouTube video and then did a speed test, and I was getting 116 megabit down. And again, this is in an area technically where I'm not supposed to have service. My service address is in a different state at the moment just because Florida is pretty much blacked out for new customers. But still, this guy orients itself, I guess, at least enough to where I can get some service. 116 megabit down is actually a little bit better than when I get at home. I get a 100 megabit fiber, so it's a little bit better. So now I can go ahead and button all this stuff up and mark this one off the to-do list. All right.